Joining us live is the Labor MP, Josh Burns. Josh, good to see you. Optus so far, it's not playing ball with your government's wishes to stump up for passport replacements. How do you feel about that?
Well, good morning, Pete. It's always good to chat, mate. It's a really serious data breach that's happened here with Optus. It's really concerning for Optus customers that their data has been accessed and made available outside the scope of what it should have. And it's up to Optus to ensure that its customers are protected. It's up to Optus to ensure that the data that they are custodians of is protected in the appropriate way. And what appears to be an extremely low-level attack has managed to outsmart a major company, and it's not acceptable.
Is Optus out of its depth?
Look, I think the main thing here is that we do everything we can to support Optus customers as a government, and this has been a whole-of-government effort to try and assist Optus in managing this data breach. But ultimately, protection of the data that Optus is the custodian of is a matter for Optus, and clearly something's gone very wrong here.
Just to an energy situation in your state, Josh, AGL is going to close Loy Yang A coal-fired power plant a decade earlier than first expected. AGL is looking to shut down Bayswater as well in New South Wales. That's 3 years earlier. Had Keith Pitt on the program a little earlier. He says this is what happens when you have activist shareholders. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't really think Keith Pitt's got any leg to stand on, given he was a part of a government that had 22 energy policies and didn't deliver one of them. But let's put Keith aside for a second, because the real people that we should be mindful of right now are the people in the communities like the Latrobe Valley, who this is a pretty difficult day. To hear AGL make this announcement is going to mean that for them and their futures, this is something that's going to affect them. And I have great sympathy for workers who have given their lives to support companies and to do hard work in companies like this and in power stations like this. So this is a difficult day for those communities. More broadly, though, we need to be creating jobs in our regions, and we need to be creating jobs in places like Gippsland and places like the Hunter Valley, and that's going to come in the form of new industry. Off the coast of Gippsland, we're going to have one of the largest offshore wind generating industries being built over the next decade, and that's really exciting, and hopefully as many local jobs will be created out of that. And in the Hunter Valley, there is so much action happening in the Hunter for it to be a leading player in the development of renewable energy for our country and also for exports.
Loy Yang, though, it's taking out 30% of your state's power eventually. You can't give any guarantees, can you, that that will lead to blackouts?
Look, I think what needs to happen is that as these ageing coal-fired power stations come off the grid, we need to manage the transition to new energy generation in a calm, sober way so that Australians have access to cheap, reliable and ideally low emissions energy being able to be accessed in their households. There is no doubt that our energy grid is transitioning, and that's why we tried to give certainty at the last election that we're heading towards at least 83% renewable energy by 2030. This sends a clear signal to industry that we are open for business. We want to see investment in energy generation in Australia, in places like Gippsland and in places like Hunter Valley in New South Wales, because we know that that's where the jobs are for these communities, and that's where we're going to be able to help bring down emissions as part of our global efforts to tackle climate change.